When it comes to cylinder head porting, I'm no pro, but I have ported cylinder heads before, and I do know some things about porting. I've watched some videos. I'm a YouTube expert, right? But I have ported my own heads, and it's not rocket science if you're keeping it simple. If you're trying to do a full-on race port and it's your first time doing heads, well, I got news for you. You're in for a whole lot of learning. But this is one of the cylinder heads off the cheap 350, and it's an L98 cylinder head. It's nothing special. It's not a Vortec head. It's not that good, but it's better than a TBI head. So I'm already spotting things I can do to clean these heads up and make them better. Now, one of the first things I noticed, and this is where the professionals earn their money, there's ridges right inside here, and they're for the push rods to go past. I can't thin these out without endangering those holes. Professional porter, yeah, he'll get in there. He knows how deep he can go. There's a casting line here. I'm going to clean that up, and other than that, I'm not going to try to thin out this wall. You can go narrower here between them. I would punch through. I'm not that good. I'm not going to do that. I am going to try to get this opening here somewhat close to the intake manifold gasket. I'm okay with the intake manifold having a slightly smaller opening than the gasket, and then having this gasket matched so that the airflow can come out of the intake manifold into here, but that smaller opening on the intake manifold will keep the airflow from going back into the intake manifold. Reversion is your number one thing to prevent, and after that you're going for flow and horsepower, whatnot. But if you have reversion, that's going to kill any gains you make porting here. So you want all the flow to be towards the exhaust and out the tailpipe. So I'm probably going to get the gasket, scribe the lines, and grind these ports out to match the gasket. I'm going to get in here on this. I don't know if you can see. Oh, can you hear that? I can catch my fingernail on that seam right there. That's probably a better visual. This line right here, that's a seam, and I'm going to smooth that out. Granted, that's in the direction of flow. It's probably not going to hurt things too much, but I want a smooth pathway for the air. The passages in here aren't bad, but there's some casting. There's these castings that they did on the roof of the port. Now, the roof of the port here is going to be a low pressure area. Your air is coming from your intake manifold, curving like that, and then it's going to curve back down into the combustion chamber. But this area right here on the top of the port is going to be low pressure area, so it's not as critical, and that's why they didn't have a problem putting these stampings there. I'm going to clean them up. I don't need those stampings there. Now, on the exhaust side of things, the exhaust ports are fairly short, and but I can see here the marking from where the gasket sat, and there's some carbon. Well, this is actually part of the gasket here. There in the corners here could be ground out a little bit wider to get more flow. So I'm going to do that, and then inside the port on the valve guide, I'm going to clean that up a bit. But these ports don't look terrible on the exhaust side, on the exhaust manifold side. So I'm just going to clean them up. Now, when I go to clean these up, the exhaust ports, I'm probably going to polish them. Polishing the exhaust ports will improve flow. On your intake ports, you do not want to polish them. I'm going to use my grinder to clean up the castings, and I'm going to leave them rough. You want a little bit of a rough surface so that as the air goes past, it'll help atomize the mixture. If you polish your intake ports, your fuel can, if the fuel touches the side of the intake port, it'll get stuck there. It'll make the smooth surface will let the air flow right past the fuel without picking it up. A little bit of a rough surface the air flowing past the fuel will pick it up off the surface. So that's why you want a little bit of a rough surface on your intake ports. Now, as far as the combustion chambers, this is where I'm going to make a difference on these heads. There's a little bit of a rough casting on the EGR port here. I'll probably radius the edges a bit. My valve guides all have sharp edges on them, and you can go thinner than this. So I'm going to smooth these down to where they come in closer to the valve and leave more room for the air to get past. Now, if you can see right here, there is definitely a nice sharp edge that's going to catch the air, and I'm going to clean that up. It's a seam between the casting, the two, the casting cores that they use to make this head, and it's core shift is all it is. There's a lip there where this bottom piece was that way, and then here on the back side, the top is shifted this way a little bit, and there's a little bit of a hang up right here. So I'm going to smooth this out. Now, you have to be real careful if you're not going to do a valve job. If you're going to try to reuse the existing valve seats, you don't want to hit them at all with the grinder. You want to get down in here. Be very mindful of where your grinder is. Get down in here and clean these things up. You can put tape around here if you want to help protect them. I'll probably do that because I'm kind of shaky. There's a reason I'm not a surgeon. But another thing on these, you want to feel the radiuses here, and I can feel there's a little bit of a lip here as this intake port radiuses back to here, and so I'm going to smooth that out. There's some sharp edges on the exhaust valves that's my finger hanging up in that port, if you can hear it. There's a radius there I want to make, so that's where I'm going to make the money on porting this head myself, is just cleaning that stuff up. It's atrocious. But again, GM sold this as a crate motor. They pumped them out by the thousands. And then finally, on the port itself, in the combustion chamber itself, I got some old valves here. Make sure I clean off the shaft before I put them in here. Ooh. I don't think that's the right valve for this. That fits snug. Let me go grab an exhaust valve that came out of the motor. Okay, I got an exhaust valve that came out of the motor here, and just picking it up, I can feel it's beefier, it's thicker. So slide it down in here, and sure enough, it's good and tight. So I got to find another big exhaust valve that's trash that I can stick in here, because when I go to port the combustion chamber, I'm going to put a couple valves in here. I don't have it set up high enough, but whenever I go to port this combustion chamber, I want 2 trash valves in here, and that way I can't hit the seats as I'm grinding this, because I'm gonna take the spark plug boss here and I'm gonna smooth it down a bit. I'm not gonna reshape the bowls here. I know there's a lot of guys will talk about how this little gap here is shrouding the airflow, and especially on this intake side. If I can get this valve up. If you look here how close this valve is to the edge, it's going to be shrouding the airflow. I'm losing airflow around this whole side of the valve over here. But I know from experience that I'm not good enough to widen out this combustion chamber. I did port a set of TBI heads a while back, and I had a trashed head to practice on before I started. It was cracked, and I figured, hey, I need to get in here and learn what I'm doing. And I tried reshaping the bowl. That's not within my experience level yet, so I'm not going to reshape the bowl, other than to smooth off the spark plug boss. And the reason you want to do that, these edges here, they're not terribly sharp, but they aren't smooth, and they will become your hot spots in the cylinder, in the combustion chamber. So if you are close to detonation, these parts here will get hot and they'll spark off your detonation. So if you smooth that down, that'll give you a little more tolerance for problems. So that's going to be my goal with porting this head, is basically just going to be clean up the the actual ports to the manifolds. I'm going to clean up the bowls and get them smoother, and then I'm going to just touch up the combustion chamber up here. The professionals, they'll spend a whole day on a set of heads. I'm not that experienced. I'm not going to spend that much time, and apparently I'm a little faster about how I go about grinding, and maybe I'm not as careful. So I expect I'll probably spend about 2 or 3 hours on each cylinder head and I'll be done. So nothing crazy, and it'll reap benefits. This is my porting kit. Basically just a grinder. I got a bunch of sanding discs and a holder for them. This disc is shot, or yeah, sanding roll. And I got a couple grinder bits. This one's good for getting in tight places. This one's good for just general metal removal. I'll probably do a lot of the work with this one just because I'm going to be doing work down in the ports. You have to have a bit of a steady hand, because whenever you hit, it'll try to kick back and hit other stuff. So be mindful of that. But I'm going to get after it and start porting. And I did, thinking about this, I don't need to get a trash valve to stick in here. I can use this smaller valve that's trash in this port, and it's going to sit on the seat and keep the seat from getting tore up. So I'm going to start with the combustion chamber here and do these spark plug bosses to start. Porting is horrendously messy. You will be covered in dust, so don't wear your best clothes, and plan on taking a shower afterwards to get all the metal bits out of your hair. Wear your hearing protection because it's noisy. So you can see I've got that smoothed down, got it rounded down a bit compared to the other one. I'm going to get a sanding roll now and smooth this out with the sanding roll. You can polish your combustion chamber, and that's not a bad idea. It's actually a good idea to just polish it completely. I do need to knock down this burr right here a little bit, but you can tell more about how your port job is going with your finger than you can by looking at it. I can feel a little bit of a ridge there that I want to smooth down. But you can feel your porting work better than you can see it. So keep that in mind as you're going. Okay, there's a lip right here, and it's pretty stout. Yeah, so I do want to grind that down, but how do I get in there with the valve in the way? Well, you can see the valve is hanging over it a bit, but I can still get in there. So this is where I'm going to chew up this valve, because I am going to put my grinding bit back in. I'm going to use the small one though. And I just want to barely come in here. I don't want to take off much metal at all. I just want to smooth out that lip there. I gotta say, as bad as TBI heads are, the one I ported was better cast than this thing. So, but I like how that's smoothed out. And you see I didn't go over it a whole lot. I just basically put a sanding roll on here and smoothed it out a bit. And polished it up. And that's all I really want to do on this combustion chamber, other than get in here and clean this ridge. And that's it. That's all I want to take off there. There's a ridge on this side too. I'm going to clean up. Okay, I can still feel this, but it's right in here. It's not out here. So I did clean this up, but it's right there in the valve seat area, and I'm not going to go into that to clean that up. If there's a lip there, oh well. So now I'm going to get down in here into this pocket and clean up the pocket. And for this I have to be careful because I can pop out and hit that seat, but I can't protect this with a valve. I got to just get in there and get it. So far I like this. I got rid of that ridge right there, and basically as you're porting, if you notice I kept sticking in here and stick my finger in here, I'm feeling the smoothness of it. I want to make sure it's not lumpy. I did get it fairly smooth. There's a little bit of a lump right there, but there's a bolt hole behind it, so I think that's supposed to be there. There's a little bit of a, if you get down below the seat here, there's a ridge, and it feels like a venturi, and there's no reason for a venturi inside the port. So I opened that up a bit, but I didn't open it up much. I'm not gonna open up this as fat as I did my TBI heads. Like I said, I'm doing a cleanup port on this. On the TBI heads, there's a ramp in here also. This one doesn't have the ramp. Don't remove that ramp in the TBI heads. It'll stall your flow. I do need to come in here and do the exhaust port now, and it's going to take a little bit of work. There's carbon buildup in here too that I'm going to be dealing with, but I do need to clean up the valve guide also. So I'm going to get my other bit in here, the bigger one, because it'll get a little further in there, and it's a little, I don't want, if I get in here in this narrow space, I could end up chattering this between the two, so I'm kind of worried about that. But I like actually I think I've got one that's got more of an egg shape to it in here somewhere, and I'd rather have one with an egg shape with a little bit more of a taper on the nose. If you look at the nose of these two, this one's got a much sharper, not sharper, but a much more squared off end than this one. And this is what I want, to be able to put a angled edge on this valve guide. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm putting more and more light on this as I keep working. Okay, so if you can see these two valve guides, you can see I've cut that one down quite a bit. I still got some smoothing to do. I want to smooth it over on this bottom edge over here, but the rest of it looks all right. I am just about done with this port. There's a ridge way back in there, and it is terrible, but it's got it in all of them. I don't see a way around that. I can't, if I open it up to that, I'm gonna be into a water jacket or something. I don't know. I don't know where the water jackets in this head are. I just know that I want to be careful how much material I remove. Matter of fact, I may be done with this. That's feeling smooth. I think I'm going to call that good. I'm not going to touch it anymore because all I can do is screw it up from there. So that bowl, I've got a little bit of a lip right here I got to get. But this bowl is pretty much done. So I'm going to move on to this one next as soon as I get this little ridge here. And again, I'm not going to polish the intake port. What that cutting I just did is my finish on it. Alright, so on the exhaust port here, it's got a rough spot like right under the valve seat. I'm like 1/8 of an inch under the valve seat, and taking away a ridge. And I've taken out a bunch of metal, and it's still not feeling smooth, but it's feeling a lot better. This was really rough over here, and there's a real sharp lip right there, and that sharp lip is gone here. I don't have that sharp lip. So I think I'm good. I just need to come in here from the bottom side. And there's really not a whole lot of cleaning I want to do to that valve guide. It's kind of small in the first place, so I'm going to get in here and see what I can do. All right, I like that. I've got the valve seat cleaned up a little bit here. I think I need to get the burr in over here. Yeah, I got a little bit of a burr there to get. I can see it now. So, and then it'll just be a matter of cleaning up the ports. Well, I've got a brand new exhaust gasket here. And those exhaust ports are pretty close. The exhaust gasket I have here is the same size as the port. So I don't think I'm going to be able to take much material out of here. It doesn't feel rough. I'm probably going to put a sanding disc in here and polish this port up and call it done on this side. And then it'll just be a matter of the intake manifold gasket that I don't have. I don't have an intake manifold gasket handy. I thought I did. So I'm probably just going to clean up the intake ports for now and call it good. Alright, so as I said on the intake port here, I'm just going to clean up this casting flash on the side here, and then the markings I did on the roof of the port, and that's going to be it. I'm not going to touch this any more than I have to. There's some casting marks there I need to take off too. But for the most part, I don't have an intake manifold gasket handy to size against, and I don't want to cut into the push rod area. I don't want to cut into, well, there's a water jacket back here. There's no water jacket up here, but I don't want to break through the surface to the oil surface here. So, and I don't want to break in between the runners. So I'm just going to do a cleanup, and that's it. Alright, I got the roof of the port here smoothed out, and I got the casting line smoothed out. There's just these little markings down here. They're not big. I can barely feel them, but they are there. So, over here. I can feel them though, so I'm going to smooth them out. Alright, there's one more casting mark further up in there, but I'm not going to be able to reach it with my tool. I'm pretty sure I'm going to come up, I'm going to be right at it if I can hit it at all, so I don't want to get it halfway done and not be able to finish it up. I could probably get it with the sanding wheel, but honestly, it's very slight. It's almost within the margin of error of what I'm doing, so I'm going to leave that alone. And that is the first cylinder completely done. As I said, I'm not going to clean up the intake port. I'm not going to sand it. I've got it ground, and that's it. So from here, I've got a pattern now that I can follow on the rest of the cylinders, and that's what I'm going to do. Alright, so I'm getting the porting work. I've got the porting work mostly done on this head, and now I'm cleaning up the gasket surfaces. And I could have done this to start with, doesn't matter. I figured if I left the gaskets on, that'd give me a little more protection whenever I'm grinding. But how do you get this gasket material off easy? Well, this is an old paint scraper. It's actually a pretty thick gauge, and it's one of my best tools for getting gaskets off. Now, wear your eye goggles when you do this, but you can see the metal of this goes all the way back to the back. So I can hammer on it, and it's not going to come apart on me. And this is going to get your big chunks of stuff off. And being that it's flexible, it's not going to gouge the metal. It's going to bend, usually, before you get too deep in the metal. Now, if it starts going to the metal, don't force it. Take a step back and re-examine what you're doing. There we go. So you can see I just got most of that gasket off. There's still some stuff on here. So the next step, my trusty grinder, I've got a roll-lock wheel on here. You can get these little roll-lock discs. You get a package of like 50 of these for 20 bucks. And you get them in all sorts of different flavors. They got the red, the green, brown, and gray, I think. The green, if I remember right, is the softest. Red is all right for, you can use red on aluminum. You just have to be careful because it will cut into the aluminum. On iron, the red ones are perfectly fine. You can get in there. If you wear at it, you can get into the iron, but you're not likely to. The brown ones will take stuff off quick, but they will eat into iron if you stay on it too long. So get the color that corresponds to what you're doing, and it's just a matter of getting in here and taking off this material. And as you can see, it does a real nice job of making that nice and smooth. It'll give you a good gasket surface, but it'll also show you where your pitting is. And I'm looking here at this center exhaust port. This thing had a blowout in the exhaust manifold between these two cylinders for a while, and it looks like it just etched. So my exhaust gasket's not going to want to seal there real well. I'm going to have to, I don't know if the copper gasket material will help plug that, or if I'm going to have the machinist smooth this off a bit. So we'll see. But that's how I clean gasket surfaces off manifolds. And I'm going to take the same wheel and I'm going to hit the deck here. And I'm just going to knock this down to where it looks clean. And then I'll come over here to this side. And this isn't going to require a whole lot, but it's going to get a cleaning also. And I'll have my exhaust head done at that point and ready to be vatted.